Some childhood hurts aren't these big, loud traumas. They're quiet. They're the empty spaces where you can just feel that an emotional connection should have been. In this explainer, we're going to break down this experience, which one writer calls an emotional drought. What causes it, how it shows up in your adult life, and, most importantly, what actually helps you move through it. Wow, this quote just hits it right on the head, doesn't it? The idea of growing up on subtitles and guesswork perfectly captures that feeling of emotional distance. It's like you were always trying to piece together a language you were never directly taught. It's not about a total lack of love, but maybe a lack of fluency in it.
So, what are we really talking about here? Let's define it. We're talking about a childhood that wasn't necessarily marked by big, dramatic events, but instead was defined by this persistent quietness, right where warmth and validation should have been.
Okay, so the key thing to get here is what this isn't. This isn't about a single defining traumatic event. It's more like a long, low hum of neglect. Your physical needs, yeah, they were probably met. You had food, you had a roof over your head, but your feelings, your inner world, they were kind of treated like an inconvenience. And that leaves you with this deep sense that your emotions just don't matter. So, how does an environment like this even get created? Let's dig into the specific conditions in childhood that cause this emotional drought to really take root. It usually starts at home, right? With caregivers who provide for your body, but not for your heart. But then, this pattern gets mirrored out in the social world, with peers at school who are just as indifferent. And this creates this really powerful repetition effect. When both home and your social life are telling you the exact same story, your nervous system learns one crucial lesson. Connection is risky, and you are basically on your own. And that childhood setup, it doesn't just vanish when you turn 18. Oh no, it has a sequel. Let's explore how these deep-seated patterns show up, often in really surprising ways in our adult lives. So before we dive into the list, just take a second. Ask yourself, do any of these early experiences kind of echo in your life today? How might that early story of being on your own still be running the show in the background? One of the most common ways this plays out is in our attachment style. We tend to overcorrect. We might swing to one extreme and become fiercely self-reliant, putting up this front that says, I'm good, I don't need anyone. Or we swing all the way to the other side, becoming anxious, constantly working to earn closeness, always on high alert for signs that someone might leave. And for a lot of us, it's a messy, chaotic mix of both. This leads to a coping mechanism you can think of as performance armor. It's where you learn that the safest way to exist is to be useful. You become the problem fixer, the planner, the high achiever. It's this nonstop way of proving your value by doing, and it's all driven by this deep-seated fear that if you ever stop performing, well, you'll stop belonging. And the effects don't stop there. There's this emotional miscalibration where you either feel totally numb or everything is overwhelming. There's that profound loneliness, even when you're in a room full of people. Total confusion around boundaries. You're either saying yes all the time and feeling resentful, or just saying no as a reflex. And finally, this sense of identity drift, where you've built a self around your roles, the good employee, the helpful friend, instead of a stable inner core. So, why do these patterns stick around for so long? I mean, this quote just says it all. Your nervous system is designed for survival, and the strategies that kept you feeling safe as a kid get wired in deep. Your brain will always prefer a familiar, protective pattern, even if it's an unhealthy one, until you actively and intentionally teach it a new way to be. Okay, we've outlined the problem, and it can feel pretty heavy. But here's the good news. These patterns are not a life sentence. So now we're going to shift gears from just explaining the problem to actually empowering you with practical, doable steps for recovery. Healing starts small, like super small. This little micro-practice of attunement is a perfect example. It literally takes 90 seconds. You just pause what you're doing, take one deep breath, and check in with yourself. What am I noticing? What's here? Doing this a few times a day builds that muscle of self-awareness that maybe never got developed in childhood. It's simple, but that repetition, that's the medicine. Here's another really powerful tool: having some scripted language ready to go. Because when you're feeling a lot of emotion, it's so hard to find the right words. Having a simple, clear request like this one can be an absolute game changer. It communicates exactly what you need without demanding that the other person fix it for you, which is honestly often the root of our anxiety. A huge part of healing is also learning to choose relationships differently. Instead of being drawn to that intense charisma that often fizzles out,
You start looking for consistency. Instead of chaos, you look for calm. And like the slide says, pay close attention to how someone handles a simple no. This is all about building connections based on real, observable, reliable data and creating what's called earned security. All right, let's run through a few more powerful tools. First, name your pattern. Saying something like, okay, when I feel ignored, I start overperforming. That turns a confusing emotional fog into a clear map. You can also calibrate trust slowly, using what you might call one-brick tests, sharing something small and seeing how it's handled. Try to consciously reduce that over-functioning for others. Maybe just do 20% less fixing. And seriously, never forget the basics. Your body is your instrument. Keep it tuned with good sleep, movement, and food. Now we get to what might be the most crucial part of this entire process. It's not just about changing your behaviors, it's about changing the very story you tell yourself about who you are. This reframe is everything. The old story probably says that your sensitivity is a flaw. I'm just too sensitive, I'm too much. But the new story understands that you weren't too anything. You were under-reflected. Your sensitivity is like a finely tuned instrument. It just happened to grow up in an environment where no one was playing any music. It's not a defect, it's a capacity. And this is just such a profoundly hopeful idea. The goal of all this work isn't to erase your past or to become some completely different person. It's actually about returning to yourself. It's about peeling back all those layers of adaptation and performance armor to reconnect with the person you were always meant to be before the drought even began. So we'll end with this question for you to take with you. It's not about getting stuck grieving what was lost. It's about taking radical responsibility for your own present. You know, the most rebellious and healing thing you can possibly do with an empty past is to actively, intentionally, and generously fill your own present.